Okay, everyone, so this is our first perspective lesson that we're going to study. And there's some things you could do with this. You could do a little practice sketch just like this one in your sketchbook. You could turn this into a project and do it on a larger paper, and instead of having this big arrow explaining, you could just finish your project out. But I want to explain the rules about drawing things in perspective, especially in a landscape like this one. In general, when things are closer to us, they appear larger. So you can see it says objects get smaller. So as I travel up the page, I'm implying these things are farther away, just like when I take a picture. And you'll notice that this tree is bigger than this tree, and the trees continue to get smaller the farther away they are. The same thing with the houses getting smaller. Even the road, you can see it gets narrower. Another thing about as things get farther away is we lose detail. So this tree, I see some branches. I've got more details in the bushes and the tree trunk. And then slowly as they get farther away, there's less detail. Same thing in the house. On this one, there's some window sills, some chimneys, some details in the roof. Here, there's a little bit of detail. Here, there's even less and none at all. Okay. Also, you'll notice these mountains in the back, so there's not a lot of detail on them. So these are things that I can do when I am drawing to imply distance. And this could be done with anything. You know, the landscape, a still life, a drawing of a crowd of people, where people or objects that are closer to me are larger and more detailed. And as they get further away, they get less detailed. And there's less variation of value. So if this was a shaded or colored picture, these would be more vibrant and detailed, and these would be less detailed even with the color or shading. So what I suggest is that you do a little sketch like this in your sketchbooks to start with. And then if you have some extra time and you want to make an artwork, you can make yourself a landscape. And you can do this on any size paper. If all you have at home is printer paper, you could do this on a small printer paper. Or if you have some art paper or a canvas at home, you could do something larger. But think about creating some kind of a landscape with some trees, maybe hills. Maybe you could even add some farmland. But what I'd like to see you do is to have a variety of things that you include in your landscape. This one's pretty basic, just to give you the idea of how objects get smaller the farther away they are. But you could draw out a design and think about your landscape and your distance. You could even look at some examples of different photography of landscapes and start drawing out an idea. And what I suggest is that you draw with pencil first, and then you could trace with Sharpie. From there, there's a couple different options. If you have watercolors at home, it would look really cool to do this in watercolor, kind of like how we did our sunsets earlier on. If not, maybe you have some markers or some Sharpies, and especially if they are thin markers or Sharpies, you could use something like this to add some Zentangle designs and some lines and patterns into your project. So like if I did that, I could have larger patterns or Zentangles at the bottom of my picture. And then when I got higher into my picture, to indicate that I'm getting farther away, could get smaller. And so even though it's the same pattern, it's smaller, and so it looks farther away. So that's an option too. Or you could do some kind of watercoloring. You could even do some colored pencils or crayons, and you can do shading with these as well. So I can take crayons or colored pencils and color with more than one color and blend them together just like I would watercolors or paints. So I'm getting some different colors here, and I can overlap them to mix them and create new colors and get kind of like a shading effect in here. So that's another option as well. Just some different ideas for you to use the materials that you have available at home and take advantage of that if you're wanting to make some artwork. once you've done kind of like a practice sketch like this. Now I'm coloring my practice sketch just to give you some ideas on how you might use markers or crayons or colored pencils or watercolors in your project, but you would do this on a new paper after you've done a quick practice sketch to get the idea. And hopefully yours would have more details, more trees, maybe some grass, maybe some animals or rocks up front. Maybe you could have a river going through your picture. So just think of being really creative with the landscape and having things be closer and larger at the bottom of your picture and getting smaller and further away as you go up into your picture.